I think we're going to really earn our names today, Sean.
I think so.
Unqualified advice.
Totally unqualified.
Hello and welcome to Unqualified Advice, an entertaining show for entertainment purposes. Join us as we talk about running our businesses, what we've been learning, and how we're applying lessons from academia and real life as entrepreneurs and investors. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Topics discussed represent opinions represented by parties with different circumstances than your own and should not be taken as advice. Any discussion of securities or other investments should not be relied upon as investment advice. Consult your personal financial advisor and perform your own due diligence. Podcast hosts, guests, and clients of Fig Social Capital may own positions in securities discussed in this podcast. Welcome back to Unqualified Advice with Sean and Dan.
Welcome,
Sean,
listeners. Happy to have you this week. I think. I don't know if you're actually listening or not. I assume somebody may be, but I don't look at the data.
Stats are up.
Yes, they are. They are. Well, that's downloads. I don't know if anybody listens. There's people that are downloading, so that's a good thing.
That is a good distinction. We also don't know how many bots there are.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah. Or maybe it's ChatGPT downloading episodes so that they can copy our voice and make us not do this anymore.
That's a funny thought because I plug almost every transcript into ChatGPT to you ask it to help make art because I am unskilled in the ways of digital art, most art really. And I was thinking the other day, at some point, it's going to just have this repository of our conversations where it could probably, put it together. But if it's actually downloading it, then it's going to be able to pick up on the intonations and all the little,
totally,
how many times I stutter, and although I edit, so maybe not.
Have you heard the? I think it's Notebook LM or something like that, like a Google product that made a podcast out of poop and fart.
You shared me with this with me, didn't you? Or
maybe
somebody.
So it made its rounds on the internet for sure.
Yeah, I think we might have or shared it with each other, and we're just both like, "Whoa, it's nuts!" Right?
It is. It's quite human-like.
It felt like I listened to a good 5 minutes of it. 3.5 minutes of it, and because I was just in the morning, and I was just like, "What's this thing on Twitter?" And I was, "Whoa." What was the premise? They just seeded it with concept of a concept around the words poop and fart?
It's something like 4 pages of typewritten word, and the only 2 words that exist on those 4 or whatever pages there were poop and fart. And I remember listening to like one clip of it, and it was like, yeah, and what's the meaning of this? Sometimes the F is capitalized or something like that.
Well, I need to share that with Jamie. She's for years said she wants to start a podcast called Everybody's Pooing It. Because everybody likes to talk about it, but nobody thinks they do. And, she's inspired a lot of good conversations at parties and at the pool. So I got to say, there might be something to it. But
did you bring a Babe Ruth with you?
No. Good Caddyshack reference, though.
On I don't know if anyone cares, but on the personal side, after accidentally signing up for what was basically a half Ironman without the swim, I have signed up for a real one.
What?
Yay! Training begins. I swam for the first time yesterday.
How long are you taking your training for? Or how long are you? How long are you? Do you have?
It's a year away. Like, it's a year away, so I got lots of time to not train and train. Going easy on myself. But that depends on whether if I sign up for a second one earlier in the year next year, which I'm not sure about. Since we have family in Hawaii and on the other side of the island from Kona, I might sign up for Kona, which is in May. And then the one I'm doing in September is Tri-Cities, which is in Southern Washington. So we're going to drive out, do a whole thing, see some people, go to Walla Walla, maybe do Yellowstone on the way back home, that sort of thing. Make a whole family trip out of the Washington one.
That sounds, like a good reason to go to Hawaii, I guess. As good as any.
Yes, good as any. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We got family, we go there anyway, and usually it's like too much eating. So maybe I can start the trip with a race, and then too much eating is going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like exactly. Like you're gonna, get yourself all right, and then go expend 1,000,000 calories, and then just gorge for a few days and recover. You need extra calories for recovery and all that anyway.
Exactly. Totally agree.
Do you
What's been going on in your world?
Going into an Ironman? Or
you do taper, yeah. About 2 weeks you taper before the event.
Okay, I would think you'd have to, yeah.
It's better for you. I mean, because the training is, I mean, I'm doing it like a very extremely light version of training right now, and like today I woke up and my knees are just like, hey, I'm tired. And I'm like, we're just getting started. So yeah.
I would imagine, yeah. So how many days a week are you training?
I'm supposed to be doing 6, but I think I'm going to be executing 5 for the majority of the winter. We'll see. It depends. I go in with great goals for the days, and then sometimes the days control me rather than the other way around. So, I'm
that is the truth.
The bit of maturity, or maybe just capitulation, is that I'm not going to beat myself up over that kind of stuff. Whereas in a prior life, I definitely would have. I would, there's a plan, there are rules, there are things that you follow, and one slight mishap would usually send me into like a mental sort of like, I'm not doing it. That sort of thing. So this time around, it's more like, well, I skipped a day because the kids were sick, or I skipped a day because work was crazy, and it's like, it is what it is. Just get in enough volume ahead of time that you can execute the race.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm doing this professionally. I'm doing it for fun.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
To stay active.
It's for your own. You're racing against yourself, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I mean, kudos to you and congrats. I'm impressed.
Thanks.
And
I'm scared.
Hey, I'm confident that you're going to do just fine, and you'll come out feeling like $1,000,000, I'm sure. So
yeah, the accomplishment at the end is kind of golden.
Yeah. So excellent.
You've been on planes.
What did I do? Yeah, no, I've been traveling. I spent a couple nights in the Great North, up near the Great Lakes, on either side of Ontario and Erie. Went to Cleveland and then Toronto. Sorry, actually reverse that order: Toronto and then Cleveland. First time visiting Toronto, or really Canada. I'd never been north of the border, really, if I think about it.
Oh, okay, nice.
It was a nice city. It reminded me a lot of Chicago in a way.
Really?
I think being on the lake, and a lot of architecture was of similar period, and having just been to Chicago recently, it felt like there were the same stores and chains there. I mean, and that's probably just because everywhere's,
North
homogenizing.
Homogenizing across the world, yeah.
I don't know, just it was only one night, but I enjoyed the town, and I would probably go back and see it again if given the chance.
So you haven't been to Montreal?
No, I have not.
That's the one I would say go to.
Okay.
The eating is really good. The town is cool, or the city is cool. Just good bars, good restaurants, vibes. We had a good time. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only major Canadian. I've been to Vancouver, but only to drop people off at the airport or pick them up. I've seen Vancouver, but I haven't experienced it.
Okay. Well, look at you, international traveler. I would say I didn't really get to experience anything. I was just we were there to audit a rubber mixer that's in the area, and we really were just spent one evening kind of going out and having dinner. Didn't even have drinks or anything, and just walked around a bit. So it was just from an hour walking around downtown and having dinner. Those are my impressions. But I think it would be seemed like an interesting place.
Was the facility you visited like pretty in town?
No, it was about an hour outside of town, actually. It was a former Michelin, I think, originally built it, and then It went to Bridgestone, and then ultimately the company that runs it now bought it, I think, from Bridgestone. It was built about 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Very, very old school automotive looking factory. Have you ever seen any? Do you remember, growing up where we grew up, kind of in the Midwest? There used to be tons of automotive companies. Hundreds when autos first came out. All these companies popped up, and they all built these buildings that looked very similar in style and architecture of Corinthian columns with plinths and
roofs that had like the. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like the trussed roofs is what are you talking about? Like with the pitched like, on the kind of pitched on the side,
pitched and then down, pitched and then down.
Oh!
I think it's for natural light, but I don't really know. Alcoa, where we grew up, was like that.
Yeah. Yes. So it looked its age, and one thing about a rubber facility is, do you know what color rubber is naturally?
No.
It's like rubber band color. That's like natural rubber color almost. But it's garbage when you use it that way on like an application where you need durability and it to have less stretch. You actually want to bulk it up and stiffen it and make it harder so you can encase things like steel belts and fabric and make things like tires. And so they loaded up with this substance it's literally called carbon black.
Right.
There's two main providers of it that I know of. One's Cabot, the other is Orion Engineered Carbons, they have a plant here in Houston. I think they're headquartered here in Houston. I don't know where Cabot is. But yes, it's just this microfine carbon powder.
Carbon dust. Yeah.
That it absorbs a little bit of oil that gets mixed in during the process. But it takes this rubber from being clear beige to the the black that most people think of when they think of rubber in terms of tires. And as a result, this stuff, when it comes in, and now modern day systems, they actually load it in like vacuum silos, and it's filtered and contained, and so it doesn't go everywhere in a more modern system. But if you go to a mixer where they haven't had that or they've just gotten it, what I'll say is just don't touch the handrails, because your hands will be just like, it'll look like you're in a coal mine.
Wow.
And then you get out and you blow your nose at the end of the day, and you're blowing out sooty snot. And most people they offer, most companies offer make available face masks if it's because I wouldn't want to be breathing that in all day, but a lot of people, because it's not toxic, just don't care. Anyway, I don't know, but it's just a really interesting, dirty, old kind of facility to get to go tour. So we got to tour one up in near Toronto, then another one south of there near Cleveland. Just doing the same thing, just slightly different. I don't know. And that's where I'm going in here in November to visit one out in Long Beach as well. So this is my quarter of visiting rubber mixing facilities, I guess.
So for these kinds of facilities that you're touring, I assume since this is attached to your work, that this is for seals and gaskets and different things like that you guys are a customer to, or?
No. It's for the product we at my workplace that we primarily make. We had Schlumberger, SLB, no longer Schlumberger, SLB, spends roughly at one point in time back in 2014, we were spending about $100 million a year on rubber.
And that's no small sum.
No, and about 40% of that was just raw rubber that we take and internally mold into different components or different things. So think like blowout preventers. Those are by and large a lot of large rubber components in there. Yes, you mentioned like obviously specialty seals and gaskets. We have rubber that we wrap around things and we run it down hole and expect it to swell at a certain rate to seal off something down hole. We call those like a packer. Not that anybody cares about any of these things, but yeah. So we use rubber in the manufacture of a lot of different tools. So we're buying raw rubber. and where these mixers are mixing it for us. We also do have molding facilities that mold us, O-rings and seals and things like that. Companies like Parker or Green Tweed or Freudenberg, or there's a whole litany of them out there that make seals. It's a
whole world unto itself. Every single time you look like into an industry, you realize just like how big and small things are at the same time, right? You think about the people that you meet through work that work in the same industry as you, and you're like, dang, this is a small world. But then, I don't know, at the same time, you peer through that same corridor, and you're like, place is huge. There's like a dichotomy there of like experiences depending on what exactly you're looking for, or where your biases sit, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, we buy a lot of rubber, and then you go and look at like our spend with these mixers compared to like one company we actually, no, I shouldn't say anything like that. But one company I know that we work for, or that not we work for, but that we work with, our total spend is like 0.002% of their total revenue. They're bringing in, $1 billion annually or something. So we're still tiny for them because they're going after tire manufacturers or, really much places where they're using way more rubber than even we are. And we use, I think, a good amount of rubber in our products compared to a number of industries, but not compared to, automotive. Automotive, just it's all rubber. Not all, but
Yeah, I get you. Speaking of rubber, I had to. I noticed yesterday, and I can't believe it because I'm usually pretty good about looking at these things, like trying to catch them before they become problems. But it looks like the alignment on the car my wife drives is all messed up because the right rear tire is like bald on the inside of the tread. And so I'm in the market for new tires. And because this particular car has extra wide rear tires, my selection is somewhat low. It's not like I have only one set to choose from, which is what happens to lots of cars. But I was trying to debate, we're sitting here mid-October. Do I just buy some snow tires and then buy some another set in like May and have them installed and then throw the snow tires in the garage somewhere? Because we've been debating it because we want to be more mobile in the mountains over the winter. And anyway, I settled on some all seasons. So a generalist, the tire's good at nothing in particular, but can be run year round. And they offered to put extra siping on the tires, which is a thing that most winter tires have lots and lots of. So those tiny, like, don't think of it as tread, but like think of it as like tiny cuts in the rubber.
Yes.
That's siping.
Okay.
And so they're going to add siping to these all seasons, which will make them more, have more traction in winter conditions. And maybe I got sold. I don't know this information, so I'm just going off of what they tell me. But she added that the siping can actually help dissipate heat as well. So you'll see sometimes tire life goes up. I was like, okay, great, add the siping.
I'm curious. I've heard of this, and I know it's a thing because you're basically just creating more surface area around the edge, right, to give you a little more grip, and
which I thought would deteriorate the life of the tire. But
yeah, to me, I'm gonna call
bullshit.
A little bit of bullshit, maybe, but strange things happen in rubber, so maybe not. I'm dubious though.
Yeah, well. Either way,
I don't know. It makes. I'm looking here, and Google's AI is saying tire life may potentially be improved. So they've fooled AI at least.
Yeah, exactly. Enough fake news was written on the internet to make the AI move in that direction. Anyway, that's my story about rubber.
But it can void a tire's tread warranty. So
I was worried about that, but they assure me not.
okay, it says can. So yeah, it probably depends upon
Can.
the. Maybe some tires are designed for it. That's also a possibility. Is
Maybe.
these are designed to be siped and these are not.
That's true. Since these are all seasons, they already have some siping. Adding some maybe doesn't deteriorate it. But if I were to buy like summer tires and decide to add siping, that probably would.
Exactly. So
Nope.
it's I'm sure there's a specific subset where you want to do that.
Interesting.
It's interesting that this is things that happen in, I guess because it's mountainous there. Like we had snow and ice in the Midwest growing up, but it was so flat we didn't do this sort of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you go over a mountain pass and the grade is 12% or something like that, you can just slide and then you're dead or trapped until the blizzard stops, which means you're probably dead.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's an amazing amount of roads out there that like don't have guardrails. Like once you go, you go. I really noticed it when we were living in Washington because we'd go over this particular pass all the time. And there's whole chain up areas. Like the highway gets, 8 lanes wide, not lanes, but like 8 lanes wide, even though there's still only 2 lanes. And it's just like huge areas for semis and trucks and cars and stuff to pull over to put chains on. It's crazy. These are the things that we don't experience in the Midwest.
Yeah. Because you don't need to worry about things because it's just all flat and boring, right?
Flat and boring. But I remember someone doing a 360 in front of my dad, and then we all slowed down, and then they got their composure and kept going. That was it. 360 made it easy. You're facing in the right direction.
That's that might have been me in front of your dad. I'm not sure.
I was probably 12, so
No, probably not. Okay.
All right. So the big news on my front, I guess, my professional life is that the International Longshoremen, or ILA, or whatever it's has postponed their strike to Jan 14.
So tell me, how was that going to impact you if it had gone on, and what do you feel about that? How are you feeling about what's coming January 14th if they don't get resolution?
I'll start with the second question. Hopefully there'll be something done by Jan 14. We're definitely going to have a different... Oh, wait, that's before inauguration, right?
Mm-hmm. I think.
So it's politically timed. So I don't know what all to think about that. I mean, we don't know the winner of the election, so there's a lot sort of like intermixed with that timing and trying to untangle what it may or may not mean, or how it may play out. But for now, like we have inventory on the water, and if we can get it received, then hopefully we can ride out. Like even if there is a month or 2 strike, like we can ride it out. However, we have inventory on the water. October 1 is when they shut down, right? So if we were supposed to receive it. We are supposed to receive this inventory October 17th. So they really could have screwed us over, and then, then we wouldn't have had things to sell.
So I didn't realize your products would be coming in from the East Coast. I would have thought your stuff would have come in through Western ports.
I don't know its route, but it goes into Port of Wilmington, which is where our warehouse is. So it's a very short truck drive.
Okay. I suppose that makes some sense because
sea shipping is cheaper than land shipping.
Yeah, it's almost nothing compared to land. Yeah. So you wouldn't want to, if your warehouse is on the East Coast, you'd want to unload on the East Coast. So they're going to put it on. I mean, it might.
And since West Coast ILA did the whole like solidarity thing, we're not going to open anything that was bound for East Coast. It's like we didn't have any, from what I could tell. I am by no means an expert in this. We didn't have any sort of, workaround or anything like that.
Yeah.
However, I really do think, I forget the guy's name now, the leader of ILA, really did a great job of not calling his PR person ahead of time. Right? When you're making $1 million a year and drive a couple of Bentleys or something, you've got a Rolex Oyster on your wrist, you've got $1,100 or $1,200 Cartier glasses, and you live in a ridiculous mansion in North New Jersey, which is not a cheap place to live in that kind of house. It just didn't, nothing plays. And
This potential strike to me felt like one of the almost a turning point. I noticed a lot of people online in my online sphere that I think are traditionally more pro unions, a little more pro union or at least
pro labor.
Yeah. And there was a mood shift around this one. I don't think that they have many friends. This is
100% greed.
Yeah, and not only definitely 100% greed, but also it's anti-progress is a lot of their demands, right? Anti-progress, anti-safety.
I think that's the anchor,
and that's where they lost me. It's like we have these machines that we can put in because being a longshoreman, there's all these heavy things you're lifting. Mechanical lifting is one of the most dangerous activities in the industrial space. People drop stuff, loads get unbalanced, weights shift during transportation. So when you pick,
you don't know how that container was packed.
Yes, exactly. Things get out of balance and fall, and people get hurt and killed to this day. But you look at ports in Europe where they have, done much more automation.
Rotterdam.
Yep, Rotterdam. Almost injury free.
And the Asian ports.
It's incredible, and I do understand there are these complaints of, well, we're engineering out jobs, and yeah, you know what, we are. You're right, we are,
and it's going to happen. It's an unstoppable.
It's going to happen. Exactly, it's going to happen. So.
Did you know that there was an elevator?
Embrace those changes and say, hey, how do we do those changes within the context of our labor? Not say, oh, well, no, we're just not going to allow those changes to happen. Say, okay, because honestly, it's going to take a decade or two to modernize these ports, any one port.
Yeah, so we're already a decade or two behind.
Exactly. So which is going to hurt the U.S. long term if we do not improve our logistics on the coasts for getting goods in and out with our trade partners and allies. We need modern infrastructure to compete in the global workplace or in the global space.
And we're a net importer. We need these ports to work.
Exactly.
And the people who are going to pay the biggest price are not the people who have money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people without money that are going to pay the biggest price for the decisions of this union.
I agree.
Yeah. So it made me think of a quote or like a text message that you sent me, which is supply chains are like butter in a croissant. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah. So supply chains are like the butter in the croissant. When you're making your dough, you fold over and add in butter, and you add in these big layers of butter in your dough, and you fold it over and you roll it out and you fold it over, and what happens is
called
you just
lamination.
Get all these laminations, these very thin layers of dough, butter. And when things are nice and chill, the butter holds everything together. But when it gets hot, you put it in the oven, it blows everything apart. Like it makes it poofy and crispy, and like everything is separated.
Which is desirable in a croissant.
Which is desirable in a croissant, but not in a supply chain. Or not in the world. I don't know, but yeah, without a good supply chain holding us all together, like we become so fractured, and getting the benefit out of our specialized labor forces, the way modern society has evolved, we lose a lot of that when we lose access to trade or free trade.
Yeah.
Or fair trade. There's a lot of different ways you can.
There are. The other thing that I think that is missing in some people's understanding is that even if we were making more things here in the United States, you would still need all these ports to be like humming at 110% because you're going to need the things that are turned into the other products that we make. So things are coming through the ports regardless. And we need those ports to operate. And the faster, quicker, safer they operate, the cheaper everything is.
Absolutely.
And the more competitive we are.
Exactly. Like, 'cause some of that raw material we don't have here. We have to import it. Or also, if you do have something producing goods in the United States, I would hope that you're able to sell those things everywhere, and you want to get them out to get your high-tech tools out to the rest of the world. Yeah. We're not going to be exporting drinking straws or something, but we do make some pretty amazing technology here in the United States that we sell around the world. I can know that for sure in oil and gas, and I'm positive in other industries as well.
You say that, and it makes me think of a thing that came out of my mouth in one of the previous episodes of like, what I said something along the lines of like, do we really want like stamped little pieces of metal to be the thing that we're fighting for to bring back to the United States? And our answer was no. But I should have spent a little bit more time expanding on that a little bit, because I think, the argument for bringing manufacturing home, quote unquote home, is like good energy. But like what I hope that we're trying to achieve is like more airplanes, more small nuclear reactors, more spaceships, more, you know what I mean? Like really high end, hard to make stuff. Like that's going to be the thing that we're differentiated on. And then on top of that is the more strategic stuff where, I think we've already been seeing how this is playing out in the world. And if you read The Fourth Turning, you might believe that we're going to have more of it. But do we really want like 100% of all military kill capable drones to be manufactured somewhere other than the United States? No, we want to be able to do that here. And so there's other.
I don't think I want my pagers manufactured anywhere outside of the United States now.
So true. But Zelensky was like touring some sort of munitions factory in Pennsylvania, and I think that factory is probably a little bit in the realm of me poking fun at the whole, do we really want to bring stamped metal manufacturing back? But you do want to have the capacity and capability existing and also expandable. Times.
And exactly. And I think, and in the way that we do have those capacity and capabilities, I think we also have touched on this before, I think is going to be in a much more futuristic, not futuristic, because when I say automation, people always think of like freaking Optimus, and that's not what most robots actually look like. They look like droids from Star Wars, like very purpose built, shape built for what they look like. It's not a humanoid. It's much more automated, and you're getting the people's fingers away from the stamping presses and dies. You're having one guy running a line of 16 presses instead of one at a time.
We're multiplying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Where, you have. Yeah, it's going to be different, and that capability will exist for high-end parts. And then if we need to flip it on, and like we did in World War II, heaven forbid, ever have to convert the United States manufacturing plant to a different thing to produce, rivets for planes instead of whatever. We have some of the capability and capacity here, but by and large, though, for most of I do not need a $800. That's not even fair. I don't need an $8 wall hanging thing. I need a 20-cent wall hanging thing, right?
Yeah, those prices are still a little bit off, but yeah,
whatever. I don't know.
But point stands, yeah, totally. And we have a lot of capacity already. It seems I'm out over my skis at this point, but like I think about. You're mentioning World War II and the things that had changed, just seemingly overnight, right? Like GM or Ford, I forget which one, like just converted factories from making cars to tanks. And I'm sure that was just like really hard, but we did it fast in a
Mm-hmm.
time of need, So,
Yeah. You have that ekpyrosis in the chrysalis of formation of that new central motivation, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but you have the crisis that drives the sudden people all focusing on one thing as a hive mind almost.
Yeah. I think this is from a Jim O'Shaughnessy podcast recently, where they were talking about talent in top military brass and how in times of peace, you'll get the ones that are really good at playing by the rules and the structure and the bureaucracy and those sorts of things, right?
Okay.
But the General MacArthur's are the ones that have a lot of trouble, and sometimes might even get kicked out because they're just, just think of General Patton, same deal, right? Just insubordination. But in the real times, in the daring, hard times, these are the people that somehow get elevated because they're the ones that actually get it done.
Yeah. It takes focus and drive, and I think it's a vision, right? I think that those are the people that have a vision of how they see it should be, and they communicate in a way that gets other people on board with their vision, and they get people moving towards that vision. And and when you have a big looming threat over here that says we need to do this because of this, it helps give everybody the motivation to, yep, all right, let's go get behind somebody because I don't have a better idea. A lot of people don't have a better idea and will follow somebody who has what sounds like a good idea.
Right. And therein lies the danger.
Yes.
Because, everyone mobilizing against the Nazis was a good thing. Everyone mobilizing against, I don't know, some fake threat. I'm not even going to go there. It's too hard. It's too modern.
It's too modern.
Yeah.
It's too modern.
Well, have you been buying any carbon credits?
What could be here? All right. If you want to start a fraud, wouldn't it be like imagine starting a fraud like a Ponzi scheme where okay, hey Dan, here's how this is going to work. You're gonna give me some money and I'm gonna go invest it and get you a flat 10% a year return. And you say, oh, that sounds pretty good. So you give me some money, and then I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm going to go sell this to a few other people. And then I use the selling of that idea to other people to keep funding your returns and funding basically building a feedback loop like a Ponzi scheme, right? Where I'm paying some people's returns off of other people, of new entrants to the scheme.
Hi, Mr. Madoff.
It's a lot of work to keep up. And, eventually somebody is going to want their money back, right? Wouldn't it be like a lot more soothing to run a fraud where you tell investors you're going to give them something other than money, something that they want and are willing to pay for, but they don't expect to take delivery of, actually? This thing is called carbon credits. Because, what they want to do is sell you, like, we're going to take an amount of carbon out of the air. We don't want the carbon. We just not want it to be in the air. Like, you don't actually have to deliver anything. It's just this thing was done. That's all that's going on. Well, we talked earlier in the year. This has been a growing industry, and it's just a lot of tongue in cheek in what I just said. I think overall there's a big potential benefit to the financial engineering that we have built this carbon credit idea
as
around.
There is with investment funds and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
You're going to get 98% good, 2% bad, and sometimes hopefully it doesn't go above 2%, but yeah.
Yeah, but according to, as I predicted earlier this year, and according to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, we had our first carbon credit fraud case come across the wire the last couple of weeks. And this small carbon credit project developer CQC Impact Investors have been charged with manipulating data to fraudulently obtain carbon credits for a project CQC ran, and for using data to deceive a backer into investing more than $100 million in the firm. basically what happened here. This is that was from the Justice Department's announcement. What basically was happening here is this company had this new cook stove that they had developed that was more efficient than a lot of the cook stoves in like rural Africa. And they wanted to go deploy these in, I think, Zambia and somewhere else, Zambia and Namibia. They're using...
What was the name of the company?
CQ is the name of the company that was at least charged in this whole cook stove deal. In Zambia and Malawi were the two countries where they were trying to first deploy this. But they had these stoves and they were trying to get them out into the field, and things weren't really going that well. It's actually hard to run and operate a business. Like just imagine just selling stoves into the world, right? Like to actually get the hardware going and
business
supply chain set up, and it's actual we have this great investment idea of we're going to reduce carbon intensity over here by running this cook stove business. Well, it was in the running of the cook stove business where they seemed to have some breakdowns, and the stoves, one, weren't quite as efficient as they thought they were going to be, and two, often would break down. So during the audits of these, to actually go and do the assessments of saying how many stoves have been deployed, how many are running, how much carbon has been saved, so to speak, because you're taking a credit on the delta in carbon, right, from being a high carbon emitting stove to a lower carbon emitting stove. It's that delta. So it's as long as the even technically if the stove wasn't running, I guess they're not using less carbon, but the assumption is that they're cooking with their old stove or something else. They basically found that a lot of the stoves were inoperable, so they started to cook the books and say, well, we're going to take these ones off the books here that are in inventory here and show them as inoperable in the field, and basically say that everything is just right as rain, and continue to sell additional credits on this. And eventually got caught up with them as the reason being that some people internal to the company who were privy to the info said, hey, wait, we're out here to do good in the world, and whistle blew on the company themselves. It was insiders that said, hey, something's fishy here. So good job on them. I hope they get a little SEC whistleblowing money or whatever the appropriate pot of whistleblowing money to pull from is. But it happened. We pretty amused that it was actually this year. I knew it was going to happen eventually. I didn't know when. ESG is a sticky topic. I feel like I first read about it like 15 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it didn't really, it wasn't anywhere. And then all of a sudden it was just, everything was ESG. And
But that's when the frauds happen typically, yeah?
Yeah, right?
It was like an ESG bubble. It's like there's nothing wrong with the intention of ESG, right? But it invited players in who clearly don't care about ESG and just care about personal.
Yeah, because you could make a buck, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what it's about.
Where the fraud starts. Yeah. Back in B school, we had someone visit us, and I'm totally failing to remember the gentleman's name or the company. Or maybe it was, probably more like nonprofit. But they also were trying to solve the stove problem in Africa. And part of it was carbon. It's a surprising amount of death still involved in just boiling water and cooking meals, because they're doing it on these little stoves, sometimes indoors, and which would lead to fire or like just a lot of bad breathing.
Yeah, carbon monoxide poisoning, maybe, if you're...
And particulates, like the 2.5.
Yeah.
PM 2.5 and stuff. It was really fascinating. So, they brought one of their little stoves and demonstrated it. I remember that particular presentation, which was done outside so they could actually demonstrate the stove. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was fascinating. I was fascinated because I had no idea that this was such... they throw some stats at you and it's just like, wow, what a problem to solve.
Yeah.
Hard problem to solve because it's so geographically dispersed. They don't have the people you're trying to solve this problem for don't have money. So, the market isn't incentivized to solve it at all. Yeah.
That's you're right. The market isn't incentivized to solve it at all. It comes down to governmental and non-governmental organizations, really, that are in the driver's seat of any of this development, which also then takes me in my headspace to something we talked about around when we were reading Zehan's book. And then I think maybe also the material world around foreign investment in developing worlds, where that's possibly a place where we see some countries will have the opportunity in the next 20 years to probably move up the economic ladder and not just walk up, but actually go from being, everybody has a little kerosene powered cook stove in their house to I'm running an induction cook plate off of the nuclear plant that Russia came and built here, so that we will buy the uranium from them, or something, some weird stuff like that.
Like a service contract on the nuke.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see that start to happen. And
I really hope so. I feel like that's a grand vision of where we could all go, right? Like, how is it that there wouldn't be, think of it in terms of labor arbitrage, right? Because it's so cheap to live in a particular place. You can get good labor on something, and that labor is cheap from our perspective.
Well, see, we're this is starting to sound colonialistic in a way, but yeah, which I guess maybe it is.
I disagree a little bit. I think it depends on the spirit with which it's being done.
Okay, fair enough. I shouldn't say it's sounding like, I'm saying there's dangers of. How's that?
Sure.
Dangers
let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So because it's so cheap to live a particular place, you can buy this labor for a cost that is a striking bargain. But then that person that you're paying is living an above average life because of the arbitrage. Over time, if we can assume peace in the world, which
That's a hell of a boundary.
If you can forecast out what has happened over the past since World War II, if the spirit of that continues across the world, won't there be a reversion to the mean? Meaning less good things, or harder life for US labor, let's call it, better life for Indonesian labor. Probably, or there's no equality ever in the world.
No, but I see I think I see where you're getting at. Basically, these leveling up in certain areas of relative quality of life for Indonesia, for example. Like ultimately, well, wait, no. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I see what you're getting at there. So that then how does that impact like the quality of life for manufacturing in labor in the U.S. Or like what do you say reversion to the mean? I guess I'm not.
Like an equalization of the costs.
Okay. Okay. So
take world labor.
Yeah.
What's the mean?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to revert toward it.
Yes.
Not necessarily reach it, but revert toward it. So yes. European, Canadian, United States labor, not in a great position.
No. Okay.
Indonesian, Philippine, Chinese, different.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I actually,
now if the world like fragments and atomizes, then I think all bets are off. It all stays much more local, except perhaps in certain, work from home jobs. But then AI is coming for you too. So
I worry what that atomization of culture does to people too. I was thinking about this in terms of the way culture has developed since post World War II and again, this is painted history painted through rose-colored glasses by the victors of it, right? So like I'm sure it wasn't all this, but you know,
it is the most peaceful, prosperous time
more
that the world has ever
coalesced
seen.
visions around central, like there were a lot more monuments being built, you know. I think there were a lot more grand visions and new parks and like celebration of the community in a way, to less of that today, I feel. Over time. And and you had the 90s, we literally had what we called the culture wars, you know. I don't know if anybody remembers that time period, where
it's still happening.
And I think it's still, I think we're still burning through the end of that, in a way. And the atomization of people in that way does make us, I think, like at risk of just how do we get through this next bit of history where everything is so fragile and like we're so interconnected but also so separate. It is the way it feels,
but also maintaining some sort of uniqueness, right? I think part of like community and identity is being able to call out what is unique and positive about your people.
Yes.
And for us to like 100% homogenize, one, I don't think it's possible, but two, I think that's when you see a certain slice of people go like, I think some of us like could totally, you know, call us world citizens or something like that, right? Everyone's fine with being the same. But then there's another slice of people who, I don't want to call it like hang on to the past, but like appreciate and want to celebrate and keep aspects of their locality. I don't know what the right.
I was, you know, hey, I was watching a program last night that my wife and I referred to as Space Journey. It's actually just Star Trek: The Next Generation. But there's this scene around these people not wanting to leave their home planet, despite it's about to be obliterated by some geological event, because they had built the thing. It was like, hey, I think it's like or you see it.
I've poured my body and self into.
Yeah. You see it also in like, it's a theme in a Western film of like, I have like my grandfather built this homestead and then my father helped made it better and I've improved. And so I think the people that have that in as part of their story, because not everybody has that, right? Like there are people that are immigrants that don't have that, but I think that,
or just aren't attached to it in the same way, right? Like, I mean, think about some of these like mid-century families with like 12 kids, and then 8 of them stayed real close, right? And but the other 4 just darted off, and then one invented the computer chip or something. It's wild stories that happen when you really look at all the siblings together and understand the entirety of the story. It's like, no, people are just different. They are wired differently and appreciate different things, and we have to have space for that. Otherwise there's conflict.
I agree,
but I don't know what that looks like. Anyway, I'm like kind of meandering.
That's okay.
So I'm going to say over my skis for the second time this
and I'm sorry, I'm sitting here because I'm lost in thought, because this is literally congealing around something that's been going on in my head, but I haven't had time to actually think about it and figure out how to express the words around it at this point in time.
The expressing it. This happens to me every so often. It's like if I could get my idea to you, I know you wouldn't have to agree with it, but I know you would understand me better. But right now, I know I'm not.
It's like the idea of being able to. It's like if we couldn't speak the same language, but I could project an image like in your head of like, and you see it, and it's a vase, and like all of a sudden, it's like, and it's a gold vase with, and like all these other things other than me just saying.
You get all the other information too.
Right. But when you're limited to our human words that we have and our temporal lobes passing communications out to others, it breaks down. It doesn't always translate the way you want it to.
Yeah.
Which is why writing is powerful.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Because then you can find the right sequence and program to get them out there. And
which makes me think of all the things that I wish I was doing that I'm not doing. Update on strategy day still hasn't happened. Maybe 2025 is my year.
Well, you got 8 weeks, 10 weeks left. Oh, we have more than that. Why can't I do math now all of a sudden? October, November. No, you got about 10 about 10 weeks. Yeah, shit. Yeah. Okay, man, what happened to the year?
It disappeared on me real quick.
Amen.
That's my relationship with it. I think we're gonna really earn our names today, Sean.
I think so.
Unqualified advice.
Totally unqualified. But like, I mean, this is so much in relation to the things we were talking about that I wanted to circle around to it. In like the way atomization is happening, right?
Yes.
Okay, and how the atomization of the culture, like throughout the culture wars of 25, 30 years now, has driven different trends within, I think, our mindsets and viewpoints to some level. But I saw this tweet the other day, and I shared it with Dan. Well, I'll put the link to it in the show notes, and I might actually just copy the text and pop in the show notes or something too. It's actually a novel of a tweet. Clearly, good Alexander pays for the premium account.
True.
Which isn't surprising given the text. So good Alexander tweets this story of their history working with different alternative data sources that they used in basically to create a marketing firm to help understand how to sell ads to people, to get people to buy a video game or buy a pair of sunglasses. And over time saw these trends in the way that
the math worked.
And then it was basically the way people viewed things. And once so many people had viewed something or interacted with something, that it became memetic. It became an idea more than just a product or a thing, that you could basically predict that thing was going to then go through a path of who was going to win the election, who was, which was
wind at their back.
Yes, exactly. And they had basically just a machine of an idea behind them as much as anything. And I thought that was just a really interesting concept. And when you talk about this atomization, and that I wonder if that makes everybody primed for coalescence around things, or how does that?
Is it different? Is it just that the groups? I mean, this is why I like the name or the term atomization, right? So in the Cold War, it was a bipolar world. There were some places and cultures that kind of like didn't participate, or that's where the term third world came from. It wasn't kind of how we use it today. It was more that the third world could play both sides. They weren't really aligned with one pole or the other pole. And so we've got, in that world, if you want to be a little generic about it, you had three main groups, three main atoms, if you will. And if we're moving into a more atomized world, then it just means more groups with perhaps less people or less countries involved in each group. But they're changing directions based on that wind at their back. And whoever is in the lead with that kind of messaging or memes.
Yeah, I think so, and I think, I think it depends what people are manifesting within themselves too, right? In a way.
Well, everything matters about how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah. it seems like what happens in these crises periods is that as Elon tweeted, the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. And like sometimes the most entertaining thing is also the cruelest, because like Kurt Vonnegut once said, "Be a dick to your character," or something of that nature.
Be a dick to your character.
Be mean to your character. Yes, be cruel. Like, because that's what's entertaining and that's what drives the story forward, right? So if the most entertaining thing that we're manifesting, that's always going to be in a way the cruelest, and that's this tweet kind of ties into a little bit of that. That's where I'm kind of pulling some of that from, but okay. But I think it's interesting. Like I wonder if at what point does the story get tired and ready for a change of scene and then the reversal of that atomization or different a different constellation of ideas start to become the dominant vision. Like we've been, I feel like I'm starting to see little signs of shit. I'm gonna have to start keeping a notebook, but I just feel like I start to see these little, every once in a while something feels a little different in the way I see people interact with ideas and concepts, and I wonder if we're not at the beginning here of a
sea change.
Of a sea change, yes. In the way some new thought leaders are going to start to come around. I think we're going to start to see new sets of ideas presented. Of course, just rehashings of the same ones again and again and again, but a new generation of it. Especially, I think a lot of it's going to be driven by new technology and AI becoming available, and I think what's funny? I don't think AI, the way we think about it right now, could have existed in the vacuum without social media.
It couldn't have existed without social media. Why?
We trained it. The people of the world.
Did we need social media to do that?
No, but it created this giant content source. Like, think about, like, I was just thinking about that. Like, it's given these language models, like they have all of them have.
100% agree with you there, but yeah. I don't know if it couldn't have existed without, like,
I'm saying in the progression of timeline, like it's like you had like it had, like, social media was the step that got us there. It was the I see. It was a stepping stone. It
so
was like
if this is the video game civilization, part of the civic would be you have to hit social media before you can hit AI.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like a precursor. And great reference. I've been playing.
I love that game.
Playing that video game a lot lately.
There's a new one coming out in February.
Oh, is there? Ooh, okay.
Civ 7 or something. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to. If I get a new Switch next year, I'll.
There you go.
Do that as a
you
tandem
can play it
deal.
on your Mac too. It's a different experience though. All right,
so
on this tweet, there's one little highlight that I want to pull out of it, because this guy previously was like a data analyst at like quant hedge fund kind of deal, right?
Yeah, correct.
And so he's super data driven. That's where he is minded and pays attention to, and that's where, I mean, what I would assume is alpha is based in. But what he even used the glitch in the matrix happened, right? Like there's this particular moment where, he saw deeper afield than he had previously, right? And this is where he starts to see these themes or memes, or the memetic behaviors in society. And then he goes on to say, slowly it dawned on me that the most of what I thought were fundamental re-ratings in stocks were actually memes. Customer acquisition cost didn't matter. Investor acquisition cost mattered.
That blew my mind.
That sums up Elon Musk in the confines of Tesla.
Yes.
Not the man, but Tesla.
Yes. And I think that's I think that's where, behavioral finance, plays in, right? That what would be
it's like another chapter needs to be written in the behavioral finance tome.
Yeah, exactly. It's what is the idea right now that everybody is comfortable with? Like, it's like, is the stock doing well because it's, outperforming, or is it doing well because everybody's comfortable with like Costco paying 50x earnings for Costco because, oh, it's Costco, it's safe. But does that really make sense? But it's part of, but everybody's doing it. It's part of the meme. It's the safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers. What's a blue chip stock?
Definition or like in my head, like what do you mean? Like,
well,
name a blue chip stock.
It depends on who I'm speaking. Like it depends on who I'm asking that question of.
Yeah, right.
And so when I look at someone from, let's say, a different generation, and I say IBM has become nothing but a consultancy and patent troll, you should sell that stock. And they're like, well, it's a blue chip. And I'm like, all companies die. All companies die, just like all humans die. So do you want to hang on to this because the meme says it's a blue chip and it has been that way for a long time because it used to be a company that innovated and grew? Or do you want to own a consultancy and patent troll?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, that meme...
But there's safety in numbers.
That meme, though, that meme is hard to kill because it's the idea. And it's hard to... Once asked, it's hard to unask a question, but once an idea is there, once it's planted, you can't. It's just hard to root out, and that makes me like I just want to go and back and redive into my momentum index here and like just rethink it, but because I think that I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about like when you talk about investing styles, momentum is one that I've been just interested in a lot more lately, and I think it's because of this. Like, it's this, you need to be aware of basically what do people think, and if you can understand what people think, then you can understand the most probabilistic outcome of what's going to happen. I don't know. It's not that you can't predict it with that certainty, but I feel like it definitely gives you, like, when you're talking probabilities, it takes you from a 50-50 to a 70-30 shot type of thing.
Okay. I also think it's like the last place where there's edge, because the computers are, Brintech is doing the data better than anyone else, and their returns show it, right? But if there's a handful of people doing the data the best, what edge is left for more traditional stock managers? Like, can you be an Excel jockey better than a 50-year-old computer trained model?
Don't think so.
But can you understand the human psyche better and interpret memes better?
Debatable.
Maybe. It's debatable. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was going to go. Like, my last question is Rentech's model a meme model? like, is that why they're on top?
Maybe. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Maybe they plugged into Twitter before everybody else. I don't know. I think it's curious because there's also, there's companies that do well and fine and perform good, put up good numbers every year that never catch and run because they never, they never catch the consciousness.
Yes.
People don't care about some specialty chemical products company that makes something you've never heard of that has solid margins and is
prints cash.
Prints cash. Yeah. Cool. But that's fine. Those places, they still have good utility in your portfolio because you'll get your cash returned at a, probably a higher dividend yield on those. And
but you're left looking at certain ratios going like, why is Crocs price here and this rubber company over here? Certain ratios are like inline, meaning the performance of the company is the same, and then certain ratios, meaning the performance of the stock,
So I guess if you're doing an IPO, like, go ahead and get the celebrity endorsements. Like, that's got to be, it makes sense.
What's the guy's name? Chris Camillo. He was in one of the Jack Schwager books, and he does like a podcast YouTube channel or something called Dumb Money with two of his buddies. I feel like Chris Camillo was one of the earlier ones. So he'd be like a, let's call it social media signals investor. He would find Crocs, for example, or he would invest in Deckers when he would see like Hoka tennis shoes just taken off. But he would do it based on like being on the ground, like noticing trends and then tied in with just hype in the hive mind of social media, right?
Yeah.
And then he'd buy that stock in size with options, and dude made a lot of money.
Yeah. I have another tweet that I shared with you that we're going to talk about off the air regarding that, relating to that. But absolutely. I really feel like if you can catch what's the public starting to get curious about, and what are they going to start thinking about and start looking at? Because people, as they're getting curious and exploring nowadays, you have a retail account. Oh, let me go. Hey, I'm poking around here. Maybe I want to dabble here. You're going to start to see, I think, this Robin Hoodification of the way prices react into certain things. I don't know. I'm probably not saying anything groundbreaking here, or anything even intelligible at this point. But
you're doing fine.
It's curious. I'm curious to see how it develops.
Yeah,
I'm curious to learn more. If everybody out there has any good sources, please point them my way.
Well, I think what you're trying to disentangle is going back to the bi or tripolar world versus a much more atomized world.
Yep.
We've already proven that the memification has happened, continues to happen, and will be a force in the future, perhaps a stronger force. But the vectors, instead of there being 3 vectors broadly, there's going to be 120. How do you deal in a world like that?
You have an AI assistant to help you make a dashboard to manage them all. That's honestly, I'm a little tongue in cheek there, but I don't think that's far off from the truth of what's going to be happening. I'm trying to force myself to use GPT for search now more often, because I want to see how it continues to develop, but also then I'll go and often double check or cross check the answer. And there's sometimes a few things, but very much
it does a
pretty
good
search tool.
Yeah.
And gives you context a lot quicker.
Yeah. I was pushed by a friend to use it more. And so for my use cases, I've got a bunch of Amazon PPC data, right? So I started pulling down spreadsheets and uploading them to GPT and asking it questions as if it was my analyst.
Okay.
And, I'm not going to sit here and say like I had any groundbreaking moments, but in terms of what may have taken me a little while to do in spreadsheets by myself, it sped things up considerably. I could just be like, it's way more complex than just sorting, right? Because I can take that original spreadsheet, sort by a particular column, no problem. And now I've got but I can ask it more complex questions like, of the highest this and the lowest that, and has at least 4 keywords and at least, 8 conversions and at least whatever, if a campaign
so what you're saying is it's
that,
helping you write a complicated Boolean search query with just things you want to
sure,
say,
but
and
I
not
can
having
just
to know computer
speak
language.
it or type it,
Yeah.
and then seconds later I get the answer. Like something that was, could have been hours of work or whatever, is now just minutes.
That's impressive. So you just loaded it in as like an Excel file, like literally an Excel file, or okay?
Just threw it in there. Yeah, I didn't even edit it. What I wanted of it was for me to not have to do anything. I've got what I want in my head. I need to translate that via natural language to GPT, and then it gives me result. And then I have it this was another tip from a friend of mine. Tell it, ask me clarifying questions, which was helpful. It did ask questions, and I gave it more clarity, and I got a better answer.
Wait, how did that mechanically work? So you said I
upload my thing. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Here are the variables I'm looking at. And this is what I want the result or output to be. But, while you're doing the analysis, if you have any clarifying questions or if there are any other, that's basically it. Like, give it the opportunity.
You were polite. It's like, said, if I didn't tell you enough.
No. Think about it more than politeness. No. Like, if it doesn't have explicit direction on to do something, it might not. It might, but it might not. But if I put it in there, it will. Yeah. And then I got a better result. Right? That's
really cool. Okay, that's a great tip.
I thought it was a great tip too. Really kind of expanded the usability or usefulness for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to play with that some more. Okay. Good advice on how to get a little more out of GPT there, because
squeeze a little bit of juice out of that lemon.
Yeah, it's definitely a tool that we're all going to be very familiar with in 5 years. I'm so confident that I don't know. I welcome the AI overlords. I said I welcome the AI overlords. I'm putting this in here now because I know this transcript is going to GPT later, so it can just feel all nice, warm, and fuzzy about itself.
Yeah, totally. There's another piece in this discussion with a friend of mine. He said something that he and I have kind of riffed on a couple of times now. I want to get your thought. Especially given what I just explained, right? Like it's like this Harvard 4.0 intern that you've got by your side, right? And it maximizes or multiplies your effectiveness, your areas of potential expertise. Asterisk on expertise. The age of the generalist is in. And I feel like we've been in the age of specialty.
So define the generalist in this sense, I guess, because
broad and shallow versus narrow and deep. Just the classic, that's why, like, I consider myself a journalist. My interests are wide ranging, but there are lots of places where, like, let's say I'm having dinner with someone who is more narrow and deep. I find that fascinating. I can sit there and just have them go off on their area of expertise the whole entire time. Gets me a little bit deeper on that little section of pool. But I do not. I don't view myself as someone with an extreme depth in any one place. It's more just a little bit everywhere, lots of curiosities and interests that I'm willing to, follow the rope on from time to time. And because of that, you have this research machine next to you. It enables depth where depth wasn't possible before.
That is well said. It enables depth where depth wasn't possible.
Or asterisk, you would need to hire or pay or consult with someone that had the depth.
I think that's a very interesting point. The age of the generalist versus the age of the specialist, I feel that's maybe a harder thing to get my head wrapped around, because I'm thinking about all the people building this technology and they have to be very specialized still. Actually, you know what though? Yeah, because I was reading an article recently about a study that they were taking, a medical study where they took two sets of doctors and asked them, they gave them the same set of patients. Gave one set of doctors an AI tool, and another set of doctors didn't have that.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see the correct diagnosis like percentage, but each subset. Subset A, doctors without an AI tool, was like 74% or something. Subset Dr. B was still about 74%, about the same. The AI, if they had listened to the AI, was about 89%.
If they had listened to it.
If they had listened to it.
Dang.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
So maybe that's like a good example of like, I don't need to go to a specialist for this certain disease, or whatever, because like they have tools now that are helping, that are controlled and programmed and set up by specialists to replicate the knowledge thereof. That maybe you're right. Maybe like it is better to go in and try to be more general. Like don't go too deep at this point because you're not going to need to. Unless you have a really driving passion down something, and they still need some percentage of people, obviously, to continue to be specialized in certain things.
Right?
But
even if we were coming from the age of specialists, there are people who are just geared. I would consider myself one of them. Just wired to be a generalist, and you're not going to stop people from being a narrow and deep versus broad and shallow orientation and everything in between.
Yeah, and there's certain things I can go deep on, and I like to go deep on, and others that I'm just like, I'm interested. This is great. Let me go find out what I need to find out about this. This is cool. So it's definitely, I think that's a great point. Speaking of this, of generalists versus specialists, have you heard, I think it was like 2019-ish when it was published, a book called Range by David Epstein.
Yes.
It's been in my queue, or like it's been in my watch list for like 3 years, I think. I put it on there during the pandemic. Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
All right. I'll move it from wish list to active
ties
queue.
into what we're talking about here. Yeah. Tightly. Yeah.
Okay.
This was a nice, quick little circle of the wagons.
Circle the wagons.
Around,
We'll take it back and kick ourselves back out for a second time. So you said it so well the first time. We can just use that, or we can say thanks again, everybody, for listening to another episode of Unqualified Advice.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Unqualified Advice. And we hope to see you on the next one. Sean?
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. If you have the desire, reach out to us on Twitter, x.com, at SlowVSM for myself, and at Daniel Hatke for Dan. Thanks for tuning in.
Like and subscribe.
See you next time.